Every year, UPenn M&T accepts about 60 applicants, and in the past 2 years, I've helped 3 of my students get into M&T, and I was also admitted about 2 years ago, which means that about 4% of people admitted in the past 2 years have been me or my students. And I want to make a video talking about it. So what's up, guys? For those of you who don't know, I'm Mo the Fro, back with another video, and I want to talk about, well, exactly what I talked about in the intro, exactly how I helped people get into M&T, and how hopefully you can get into M&T and what all of it means. So for those of you who are new to the channel, I do college advising. This is a college advising channel, and I also do private advising. So I have an email, mustafadoesstuff@gmail.com, which you can email, and I do one-on-one advising, and I've helped a number of students get into top programs in the past few years. So I've helped people get into Wharton or M&T, like I mentioned in the intro, Columbia, like Koch scholarship, medical residency, med school, like a bunch of random top programs. It's really been an interesting journey, and I want to talk about everything I've learned through that and what that means for the future and what that means for you and your possible admissions journey. First, I want to just start with my story. So like, how did I get here and why am I doing this? And it's kind of, how did I get in? So basically, I applied to M&T out of high school, and I was super gung-ho about it. I applied early decision, and I said, if I don't get into M&T, I want to get into Wharton just so I can transfer to M&T. So I did ED1 M&T and ED2 to Wharton, which basically means like I applied, if I didn't get into M&T, I would be applying early decision to Wharton anyway. And I just wanted the chance to transfer. I forewent my opportunity to apply to other colleges simply because I wanted to go to M&T. And, admissions day rolled around December 16th, like a day etched in infamy in my memory, apparently. So anyway, December 16th, 2020, and I was rejected from M&T, and I was admitted into Wharton, so I was like bittersweet. I was happy to be in Wharton, but at the same time, I was like devastated. I really wanted to go to M&T in particular, and I was just like crushed and frustrated and really wanted to figure out how I could transfer. Of course, I don't want to mute the fact that I was happy at the same time, but, like I wanted something and I was shooting for the top and I didn't reach my goal, and doesn't mean that I did badly, but at the same time, I didn't reach my goal. So I spent my entire first year at Penn, like literally my oldest emails in my Penn inbox, asking people how I can dual degree, meeting M&T students, trying to figure out how to transfer, what they did in their application that got them in, what the commonality was among M&T students, and like just everything I could learn about the program. Literally laser focused on trying to apply to M&T, trying to enter all the info sessions or interviews with the admissions, not the admissions team, but like the directors of the program to try and figure out what exactly they were looking for, etc. And then I applied to transfer, and that was about 2 years ago now. So I transferred in 2022. I started college in 21. And I applied to transfer to M&T, and I was admitted. Every year, M&T accepts about like 3 to 6 transfer students, and I was admitted, and I was super happy, and I was actually elated. I was just in tears. I was just like, anyway, we don't need to go into the whole story. I'm sure there are tons of videos online of people freaking out about getting into colleges. So I transferred to M&T, and I was super elated, and transfer admissions are really unique in some ways. I mean, they're similar. They're actually the same prompt that you guys have for normal admissions, but it's unique. Transfer admissions is harder than normal admissions, and I'm not saying this to like pat myself on the shoulder. I think this is important to the story, but like you're competing against Penn students, so the admissions rate is about the same as normal admissions, but you're competing against Penn students. They accept 3 to 6 students a year, and you're just like, competing against people that already got into Penn. And again, like I said, I was rejected from M&T first, to be fair, I didn't get in when the admissions was easier. So it wasn't that I was so cracked, but I think that there's definitely a certain way to write the application. And through this entire process, I learned how to write applications super well, but I also learned how to write the M&T application in particular. It has some unique things about it, and I just had read so many M&T essays by that point that I kind of pattern recognitioned some part of it. And then we move on to the future. So I started doing advising. I actually did it before that. I was doing it before I helped one of my international friends get into Wharton. And then I was doing advising for M&T. So word made around, there was only 3 people admitted in my transfer class because it was the COVID year. There were so many people that gap yeared into my year. which meant that like the year was super full. So they accepted fewer transfers essentially. And basically word got around, and then also I started making this YouTube channel. So I really wanted to, I told myself, I promised myself, if I get into M&T, I'm going to make content because I want to help people that are applying to M&T and help them, because there's just not a lot of information on the internet. And also I felt that I was qualified out of high school, which thankfully the transfer admissions validated, I think, unless I became like really qualified my first year, which I really don't think was the case. But I didn't know how to write the essay. And because of that, I was rejected when I feel that I should have been accepted. And I feel that the transfer admissions validated my take, whether that's a toxic take or not. So I basically made this channel to try and help people get into M&T. And my first video was, about what M&T is. And for those of you who don't know, if you want to watch that video, you can, I'm sure, find it somewhere on the channel. I could probably link it up here or on this side since there's more space. Anyway, so I wanted to make this channel, and then I started getting a lot of requests from people that wanted to apply to M&T. There wasn't much content, so they found my channel. And then also within school at the same time, a lot of people heard, there was so few transfers that a lot of people just knew like who the transfers were. And I started getting people in school trying to ask me how to transfer. That brings us to my students and what I did for them and how they got in. So for all three students, I will say there was a common thread. I've helped a lot of people apply to M&T, I will be clear. But formally helped versus just helped is, I'll explain. So what I mean is, in all three cases, I worked with my students in the same way. I met with them before they wrote their essays, and I gave them instruction and guidance on what they should be writing about in the first place, which I think is actually very important. And then I let them go write their essays on their own, ask me questions if they had any, and then they wrote their essays, and then I went and edited their essays with them. In some cases, I edited some. They wrote them well the first time based on my advice, and sometimes I edited them a lot. I didn't like the way they wrote their essays. I said, you need to change this whole essay, which I do frequently, to be honest. So I have helped a lot of people by reading their M&T essays. I do read a lot of essays that just come through to my inbox. I do want to help people, but no one whose essays that I just read and edited has actually gotten in. And I think that that's because once you write your essays, they could be about the wrong topic. And it's really hard for me to tell you to go switch around the entire topic. And I really need to be able to talk to you, to talk about your extracurriculars, to talk about what the best thing you can do is and the best story that you can tell with your extracurriculars are. And I mean, there are ways to figure that out without me too. You can watch these videos and maybe not necessarily talk to me, but I do think it's important that you start with a good idea, instead of write whatever and then rework blah. And so I helped three people apply. And I want to be as candid in this video as possible. I want to be very honest. I'm not going to act like I was the deciding factor in everyone's application. And I want to honestly describe what happened. So two of the students were transfers, and they were already Penn students, which again, you might think means that it's easier to get in, but the admissions for transfers, I think actually all M&Ts would agree, is harder than normal. Just like I said, so few people get in transfer, and you're competing against an entire pool of people that already got into Penn. So very, very talented students to begin with. And they've had, extra time to differentiate themselves while they've been in Penn, which could be good or bad. I do have, more I could say about that, but I actually can't say some things about that. And one of the students was a non-transfer. Actually, if you know Dylan Ott, who is now doing TikTok and is TikTok famous for doing college advice. He was my student, so he came to me and asked me some questions about admissions. We got on a call and I talked about what he should write, and then day of for his essays, I helped him edit a ton, and make a bunch of edits to his essays, and then he was admitted to M&T. And there's more I could say about that too, but I want to keep it to the commonalities between all three students. I don't want to get into specifics, but one thing I want to mention is you might be thinking again, either I might have helped a lot of people, so getting 3 in isn't that impressive, or I might have just had people that were already cracked. And I want to be honest, one of my students, I felt like he was cracked. I felt like he was going to get in without me, regardless of whether I helped him or not. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe I did steer his essay in the right direction, but he was a quite talented student to begin with, and I felt like, even if I hadn't helped him, he likely would have gotten in. The other two, I can't say for sure. They were both good students. And I think they probably had a great shot. I mean, they got in, so they did the extracurriculars and the work ahead of time. But I'm just being honest with how I felt about these applications. But still, I do think I made a difference in these people's applications, in their lives, hopefully. and hopefully I made things a little bit better for them. So moving on to what these students actually did and what I told them in that advice. So basically I had some pretty standard advice, but also substandard. And I will say the M&T admissions, and what's unique about it is they only admit about 60 kids a year. So they say 50 to 55 on their website, which is true, but they admit more because you don't get everyone coming to commit to Penn, and also the classes have been a bit bigger the past few years. That being said, there is, like, M&T is unique in that there's so few students, and everyone's unique. Like, when you have just 50 kids, they're not accepting the same, like, cookie cutter person. There's a lot of opportunity for statistical variance. There's a lot of opportunity for you to do a unique thing and get in. I will say that recently, in the past 7 years, and I mean, I've asked the director about this as well, there's been a push to make M&T more entrepreneurial, to look a little bit more tech focused and look a little bit more just like people doing their own things and having their own, like, successful businesses, startups, etc. That's not always been the case. And that's something that's a little bit newer, but that's something that's happening across the entire Ivy League and happening across all top colleges in general. People are liking to see this, like, self-starter nature more than just this cookie cutter, like, I check these boxes of being well-rounded, etc. So I think that the most common thing that people have done to get into M&T is having some sort of, like, doesn't have to be a startup, but something that you started, like some business, some nonprofit, some, like, tech-focused thing. Like, AI is really booming. Students are really taking to AI right now, starting these random AI startups, making a decent amount of money, and like that. Literally, that's what they're doing. So I think that's, like, a very common thing that's being seen in M&T, and you're seeing this thread of students that are all entrepreneurs in some right, I would say. Now, that doesn't mean they stay with that. The majority of students end up going into, like, tech or, like, product management or whatever, but it's something that I noticed in, like, all the essays that were successful, or at least a decent amount of the essays. I think all of them. Anyway, so I think that's, like, the first thing that you see, and I can't really write you your story, and that's why I feel that all these successful applications have started with the student's story, and started with them just having a conversation with me, and started with them just talking to me about what they've done, what they're passionate about, what they enjoy, not in the college speak. And I think that like, college essay speak is, like, something people fall into, like, oh, like, you know, I've done X, Y, Z, and they want to seem like, you know, so cool and blow up their achievements. But just, like, each kid has their own story, and trying to take someone else's story, and trying to base your essays on that, or trying to, like, hear, you know, like, look at other successful M&T essays, I feel like is really ineffective for M&T in particular. I think it's more effective for larger universities that admit, like, 2,000 students. You start to see some of the patterns. But M&T has fewer patterns. So I think that you as an applicant really just need to have something unique about you that you've done, like startup, business, nonprofit, volunteering, organization, whatever, and you need to tell that story, and then you need to attach it to engineering directly. You need to attach it to business and engineering in particular, but, like, really engineering. It's easy to see why you'd want a business education in a lot of instances, and, like, really easy to attach anything to a business application. And I'm going to be honest, in a lot of instances, students write the same business part. I want to go to M&T, you know, the Wharton side, to learn how to run a business, to learn how to communicate with people, etc. The engineering is where you can differentiate yourself. M&T is getting a lot of CS people, which is fine. AI is really big right now, but you need to, like, figure out how that thing you've done connects to some grander goal with engineering. And, like, it almost sounds like I'm just explaining what the program is. Like, you're just writing why you want to use the degree of engineering with your extracurriculars, but, like, it's really that simple. I'm not trying to, like, say, like, you know, I'm not trying to say it's easy, but I'm just saying, like, it is they actually are looking for more simple, plain language applications. I mean, I even was told by, you know, one of the directors, like, we just want you to be honest. Like, I told M&T in my transfer application that I got rejected. Like, I was straight up. I was like, I got rejected, early decision, bruh. Like, sorry, guys. Like, I'm applying now because, you know, I still want to go to the program, etc. Really be honest and really be straightforward, which is some of the stuff I've said in my first video. Like, the advice hasn't changed that much. I will say, like I said, I've learned through these 3 students. I think that AI is like a bigger focus right now. And that AI, like, I mean, it's true across the world that AI is kind of like this. So writing about AI has a little bit more stock than it did 2 years ago, although they still cared about it when I applied back in 2021. Actually, I remember Gad in 2020, the like director, talking about AI. He's like, some of you don't know what AI is. So, all of you will learn what it is by the time you're leaving. So it was definitely something on the program's mind. But I think I've learned that from the past interactions. But what I want to say is like really plan out like what's the big thing I did, and then come up with a reason that you did it. Like, I don't mean like make up a reason, but like figure out the reason that you did it. Start with why you did it, and why you're passionate about that, and why that's something you care about, and then how M&T is going to allow you to advance that, and how whatever engineering you need is going to allow you to advance that, and whatever business you're planning to do is going to allow you to advance that. And it's pretty much like answer the prompt. Like engineers, I like to say, are like straightforward. M&T is like engineers at the end of the day. I feel like the engineering takes over the Wharton side a bit these days. And like they just want you to be straightforward and like answer the prompt. You don't need to be fanciful. You don't need like pretty language. My first essay was like super pretty, and my second essay was like very straightforward. Like, guys, I got rejected. Please let me in. Okay, it wasn't like that. But be direct with your goals. So in my essay, the first thing I said is I want to be an entrepreneur that, changes the way people interact with the world. It was the first, like, that was like the first line, pretty much. Like there was a hook and then that was like the first line. Didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't say like entrepreneurs are the greatest like thing that humanity has ever created. Like, no. I was very straightforward with it. And I gave that advice to my students. I said, start with your reason why, and then talk about what you want to do and why. And then like really hammer home why, and like why that's something that you're really motivated to work on. And then talk about how engineering in the future is going to help you do that and help you tackle that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. But I do want to talk a bit about the planning process. And I just want to touch on the planning process for a second, because I think you should really plan out these essays. Like I said, like the success I noticed in my students was when they talked with me ahead of time. When people just went and wrote their own essays, they had a lower acceptance rate, which, again, I'm not saying like it's just hard. Like you just need someone to guide you, and you need like not a mentor, but like even when I went and wrote my own essays, I did terribly. I had to go talk to all the other M&Ts and like ask them what they did. Like it's very helpful to have someone that can guide you in that. And maybe it's not me. Like, although I think if you watch my videos, that'd be helpful. A lot of the incoming class like knows me from my videos, or like watch them before they apply, which thanks guys, if you're here. But I think that like really thinking about these things ahead of time and planning your essays and planning out the structure and then writing and then editing is superior to just like, I have a blank page, I'm just gonna like, you can't have a blank page and just type, but like you should really be thinking, what's my most impressive thing about me? What's the biggest thing that I've done, so that I can show it to colleges? M&T particularly says, like, if you like want something to be known by the admissions team, just put it in the essay. And like, that's like, it's almost like too simple advice, but I feel like it's easy to overcomplicate college admissions. And I feel that I can't give general advice for this as well. And like every student I would start by asking, like, I guess I can go through that like little question chain I ask, but I start by asking like, what's up? Why do you want to go to M&T? Why do you care? I'm not the college. I just genuinely want to know why you want to go to M&T. Like, why, what do you want to major in? Why? What do you plan to do with it? Like, what are your goals? Like, do you want to do entrepreneurship? Do you want to do like private equity? Like, what do you want to do? What are your goals? And I want you guys, I guess, to have that honest conversation with yourself. Like, don't sugarcoat it. I tell people, like, bruh, if you want to get the bag, if you want to go to M&T to get the bag, I don't care. Just tell me. But, like, we need to figure out how to structure the essay so that you're not just saying, I want to go to M&T to get the bag, but you can, find some other reason to go to M&T that sounds a little bit better. Unfortunately, I mean, you could just say, I want to get the bag, but you could. But anyway, and then I go and have a conversation with them. What have you done so far that shows that you've been interested in what you claim to be interested in? What extracurriculars did you do in high school? What big things have you been working on? Oh, you did that? Write about that. That's a really impressive thing. Like, frame it like this. Frame it like, like this. Like, and even if you haven't necessarily connected all the dots beforehand, meaning that you did extracurriculars without really like making some connection between them, or like having some connection between them, you can connect them afterwards. I mean, I was just talking with a student, and like I can give you a little example, I suppose. M&T in particular should be tech related though, but I was talking with him, and he was doing dog walking and like a business podcast. And he was like, how do I connect this? And I'm like, well, focus your podcast on entrepreneurship for youth, which is what he was focusing it on anyway. But I was like, make it very explicit. And then say that, I worked on this dog walking business and I found it to be very enriching. And I found that I was able to make a lot of money doing this simple thing in a different way than just like working at In-N-Out. And then I was like, this is great. I'm able to make money and do something I enjoy. And I was passionate about it. And then I started hiring my friends, and just working together was really easy. And I wanted to promote this like youth entrepreneurship. So I started this podcast, and now we have 1,000 weekly listeners, and whatever, you can connect the dots, and you start with that passion of wanting to help youth with entrepreneurship. And then you start with why, which is, in this case, I went through this business starting process and I really found it enriching, and I found it to be, really enjoyable and something successful. And then you move on to what else you've done. I've done this business podcast, which also I've used to enrich youth. And then I've done, X, Y, Z, and you can continue the chain. And I really think that's the successful way to write the M&T application and to hopefully get in. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't have too much else to say, but again, if you're interested in asking me personal questions, I do private advising at mustafaduststuff@gmail.com. So you can email me, or you can drop a comment, or whatever you'd like. If you want to, well, not whatever you'd like. Hopefully you don't find my address and knock on my door. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it was helpful. Thanks.